I want to tell you about the year I stopped explaining myself to the people I love most. I am 85. Last spring, at my own kitchen table, I made a list of every ordinary decision I had been handing to my family for approval, the way a man hands a form across a counter to be stamped. There were 7. 7 small choices that were already mine, and I had been turning every one of them into a hearing. Not one of them was a crime. When I finished that list, I did not feel ashamed, and I did not feel proud. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in a long while. Come sit down here a while, and let the kettle do what it does. I am not telling you I stopped loving my family. I did not go quiet on them. I did not build a wall, and I have never once thought their questions were an attack. My daughter Marlene asks because she cares. My son asks because he worries in the only language he was given. A sincere question is not control, and listening to people who love you is not surrender. What I stopped was smaller and heavier than any of that. I stopped asking to be allowed. Do you know that feeling? My grandmother said, when you keep pulling up a seed to prove it is growing, you are the one who stops its growth. She told me that in a bean row when I was 9 years old, a sprout dying in my hand. I had dug it up 3 mornings running just to be certain of it. She did not scold me. She put my hand back over the hole and said, cover it and let it be a private thing for a while. I did not understand her for 70 years. Then I understood her all at once. There is a difference between telling your family what you have decided and asking them to agree with it. The first is love. The second is a small, quiet surrender you make so often you stop noticing you are making it. How many times have you explained a good decision until the other person finally nodded, and then called that nod your permission? So here is the first confession, and the first choice I stopped submitting for review. Number 1. I stopped explaining why I wanted a quiet afternoon. For years, if my son came up the drive and found me on the porch at 2 o'clock with nothing in my hands, I would start talking before he was out of the truck. My back, the fence line I had walked that morning, the gutter I meant to get to, the poor sleep. I handed him a whole invoice, and every line on it argued that I had earned the right to sit down. Sitting down does not need an invoice. My grandfather rested 1 field in 7, and the neighbors talked, and the field said nothing back to them. A field does not apologize for lying fallow. It is not idle. It is getting ready. So now I say 2 words. I'm resting. Then I ask about his girls. Do you do that? Do you build the invoice before anyone has asked for the bill? Before the second one, let me set something down beside you. So many of you have written asking how to begin. That is why I wrote a small book called The Native Way. It is quiet, like these evenings, the sayings my grandparents left me, and the plain words I use now when I want to be understood without pleading. A few of you have told me you read 1 page and set it down and come back to it in the morning. That is exactly how it was meant to be used, slowly, the way you drink something hot. No pressure at all. I am here with you tomorrow, whether you ever open it or not, and nothing in it matters more than the 7 things I am telling you tonight. If your heart wants it, it is there. If not, stay right here in this chair. Now let me give you the second choice, because it is the one that cost me the most years. Number 2. I stopped explaining why I said no to 1 more job at the community hall. For half a century, my name was on every list in this county. Chairs to stack, coffee to make, the October harvest supper I ran for 31 years. Then last summer they asked me to run it again, and for the first time in my life I did not want to. I had made myself a promise that spring, a small one. Thursday mornings in the shop, building a cradle for my first great-grandchild, who was not born yet, and had no idea a man was measuring wood for her. And what did I do when they asked? I read them a ledger. My knee. The taxes coming due. The drive home in the dark. Every reason but the true one, because the true one sounded selfish out loud. I had a promise to keep, and it was only to myself, so I thought it did not count as a reason. My grandmother said, A well that is drawn for every bucket will finally give mud. She was not scolding anyone who came with a bucket. She was telling the well something. Now I say, thank you for asking me. And no, I have something of my own that morning. That is the whole sentence. Nobody has argued with it yet. Have you ever noticed how a short no is easier for people to hear than a long one? Number 3. I stopped asking my family to ratify how I spend my own money. In February, I decided to take the train to the coast for 5 days. Not a grand thing. A small room, a gray ocean, a plate of fish, and a week of watching water do what water does. I had saved for it out of my own pocket for 2 years, and then I got on the telephone and started campaigning. I called Marlene and explained the price. I called my son and explained the price again, and added the weather forecast and the name of the place, and how the fare was cheaper on a Tuesday. I was not informing them. I was gathering signatures. Marlene asked good questions. Was the room on a stair? Would I have someone to call? Those were not chains. Those were her love wearing its work clothes. And I listened to every one of them and changed 2 things because of her. Listening is not surrender. But somewhere in that call, I heard my own voice go thin, the way it goes when a man is asking to be let out of a room. My grandfather said, a seed kept forever in a jar never becomes shade. He had a whole coffee can of seed corn he was too careful to plant, and he died with the can still full. And I have thought about that can my entire life. I went to the coast, I came home browner and slower and better. What is sitting in your jar right now? Number 4. I stopped explaining why I changed a family custom that had gone hollow. 40 years, I cooked the March supper in this house. 2 days of work, alone, and then 11 people arriving tired, eating fast, checking their phones under the edge of the table, and gone by 7:30. Everyone was doing their duty. Nobody was doing their joy. The love had drained out of it slowly, the way heat leaves a room nobody sits in. There was a man I knew years ago, Samuel, who lit the lamp on his porch every single night after his wife passed. Rain, snow, it did not matter. He climbed those steps and lit it, and he did it for 9 years. One evening, his granddaughter came up behind him and asked him, plainly and without any cruelty in it, "Who are you waiting for?" And Samuel stood there with the match still burning down toward his fingers and found that he did not have an answer anymore. The lamp had stopped being a welcome. It had become a chore he was performing for a house that had already let him go. So I moved our supper to a Sunday afternoon. Everybody brings one thing. 2 hours, in the light, in the yard, if the weather allows. I did not present a case for it. I made one call and said, "We're doing it this way now, and I hope you'll come." My grandmother said, "A shed skin is not a betrayal of the snake." I kept the people. I set down the performance. Which one have you been mistaking for the other? Number 5. I stopped handing my private grief to people who would turn it into a subject. My wife Adeline has been gone 11 years, and there are still 4 or 5 days a year that come at me sideways, the middle of February mostly, her handwriting on the back of a recipe card, nothing I can schedule. For a long time I would mention it, and then I would sit there while the room decided what my sorrow meant, whether it was too much, whether the house was too big now, whether a man who cries over a recipe card ought to be living out here at the end of a gravel road. They were not unkind, not one of them. They were frightened, and frightened people reach for solutions the way you reach for a railing. But a feeling that is handed over for discussion stops being a feeling and becomes a case file, and I was the case. My grandmother said, "Roots do their deepest work where no crowd can watch." Now on those February days I put on my coat and walked the tree line and let her be mine. It is not a secret. Secrets are heavy. This is only privacy, and privacy is light. Do you know the difference between something hidden and something simply held? Number 6. I stopped correcting a story about myself that my family tells wrong. There is a version of my life that gets told at gatherings in which I am the stubborn one who would not sell my brother the North Field. And that is why he moved 3 states away and why we lost those years. It is not true. There was a bank and a lien and a promise I had made to our mother, and it was not a matter of stubbornness at all. For 20 years I chased that story around every table like a dog after a truck. I brought dates. I brought paperwork once, God help me, in a folder, to a birthday party. My grandfather said, "Give a true answer once. After that, do not turn your life into a courtroom." So last Thanksgiving, when the story came around again, I said that is not how it happened, and here is how it happened, and I said it in about 4 sentences, warmly, with no folder, and then I let my cousin keep the version she needed. She may need it. It may be holding something up in her that I cannot see from here. There was a man in an old story, Eli, who heard a voice in a canyon and went after it. Every time he called, the canyon called back, and every time he ran toward the answer, he found only more rock. He spent his whole day chasing company that was never anything but his own voice coming home. An echo cannot be argued with, and an echo cannot change the man who made the sound. Now the 7th, and I will tell you honestly, this is the one that took me the longest and hurt the most. Number 7. I stopped explaining until the disappointment went away. Marlene and her husband finished the room over their garage last year, with the good windows and the wide door, and they finished it for me. She stood in my kitchen and asked me to come for the winter, and her whole face was already living there with me in it. I said no. And then, because her eyes changed, I started talking. The stairs, the drive, the dog, my own bed, the neighbor who plows, on and on for 11 minutes. And I was not explaining anymore. I was working. I was trying to reach into her chest and remove her disappointment with my bare hands so I could be free of it. That is what my long explanations always were. Not information. Labor. Labor performed on other people's feelings so that I would not have to sit with their sadness about a choice that was mine. My grandmother said, "Geese come apart in the sky and never leave the sky." Marlene was disappointed. She is allowed to be. Her disappointment is a feeling, and a feeling is not a verdict on my life. We are still under the same sky. She came for coffee 3 days later, and we never mentioned it again. Now, the Sunday after that list was finished, we were all at the table here. Somebody asked me why I was not going with them to the auction on Saturday, and I said I'd rather stay home that day. That was all of it. 9 words. I had my whole speech loaded behind my teeth, the knee and the weather, and the price of gas, and I did not fire any of it. Nobody argued. Nobody asked me a second time. The bowl went around, and my grandson said something about a truck he wanted, and the room just carried on. And I sat there in that silence, and I was afraid, honestly afraid, the way you are when a step you have leaned on for 60 years is suddenly not under your foot. Then it came to me, and it came gently. All those years, all those speeches, I had not been explaining anything. I had been asking. Every long reason was a small request for permission, and the silence was only what the room sounds like when a man finally stops asking. Naming these 7 was not the same as hating myself for them. I am not ashamed of the man who explained too much. He was trying to be loved and stay honest at the same time, and he did not know another way. Every one of these 7 had a door in it, and a door only ever means one thing. You can walk back through. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl. 1, a quiet afternoon, taken without an invoice. 2, a promise to myself, kept without a ledger. 3, my own money, spent without a vote. 4, an old custom, changed while keeping every person in it. 5, a private grief, held instead of handed over. 6, a false story, answered once and then released. 7, someone I love, allowed to be disappointed. Now turn them toward your own kitchen. Do you rehearse before you telephone your children? Do you start a sentence with the word because when nobody has asked you why? When you say no, do you keep talking until the other person's face softens? And that one thing you want to do this year? Who exactly are you waiting to hear from? I know what you are thinking because I thought it at 84, sitting right in this chair. Is it too late for me? No, it is not. You are not undoing 60 years tonight. You are only leaving one sentence unsaid tomorrow, and then noticing that the world does not fall down. And hear me on this. A short answer is not a slam door. The people who love you do not need your reasons half as much as they need your honest face. They are still there. They are still coming up the drive. They are waiting for the real you to arrive at the table instead of the lawyer you send in his place. Now I would like to hear from you. Of those 7, which one hit closest to home? Leave a comment below with just the number, 1 through 7, and tell me what you stopped explaining, or what you still cannot stop explaining. Let me know in the comments, because I read every one of them, and I read them twice when they come from somebody who is tired. And if this fire suits you, subscribe and stay a while. Sit with me again tomorrow. The kettle is not going anywhere, and neither am I. Good night, my friend.